Imagine losing your freedom, not because someone caught you committing a crime, not because there was video, not because there was undeniable proof, but because somebody looked at you and said, "That's him." And years later, even that person starts wondering if they were wrong. That's the unsettling story at the center of episode 1 of The Accused. Beyond Reasonable Doubt, a true crime documentary that doesn't begin with a murder. It begins after the verdict. Because this isn't about finding a killer. This is about asking a question that nobody likes asking once a conviction has already happened. The story takes us back to 2005. It starts like many tragedies do. Nothing extraordinary. Normal people, normal relationships, normal tension. Then one day, everything changes. A confrontation breaks out. Words turn into aggression. Aggression turns into violence. And by the end of it, one man is dead. His name was Robert Darby. And very quickly, attention turns towards someone police believe was involved. Jason Moore. At first, it seems straightforward. A fight, witnesses, investigation, arrest, trial, eventually, conviction. Jason is found guilty of murder. For most people, that should have been the end. Justice delivered. Case closed. Life moves forward. But for Jason's family, life stopped. Years passed. But they never accepted what happened. Not because they denied a death occurred. Not because they wanted sympathy. But because they believed something dangerous had happened. They believed the wrong story had won. And once someone is convicted, changing that story becomes one of the hardest things imaginable. Because criminal convictions don't reopen easily. People trust verdicts. Courts trust verdicts. Society trusts verdicts. So if you want another chance, you need more than emotion. You need doubt. Reasonable doubt. Jason continued insisting he wasn't guilty in the way prosecutors described. According to the case presented later, Jason claimed he wasn't the person who carried out the fatal act during the confrontation. But years after sentencing, saying you're innocent doesn't carry much power. Lots of people say they're innocent. Very few get people to listen. Yet Jason's family refused to stop. Year after year. Appeals. Phone calls. Questions. Research. Anything that might reopen the door. And slowly, something began changing. Then comes the moment that completely changes the emotional direction of the episode. An unexpected person begins questioning the conviction. Not a defense lawyer. Not a journalist. Not a campaign group. Someone much closer. Someone connected to the victim. Robert Darby's own brother begins expressing concern over whether justice truly reached the right conclusion. That changes everything. Because suddenly this stops feeling like one family refusing reality. Now, someone from the other side is asking, what if something doesn't add up? What if grief and justice aren't always the same thing? As the documentary digs deeper, attention turns toward one of the most powerful forms of courtroom evidence. Eyewitness testimony. At trial, witness identification became central to the prosecution's case. Someone believed they recognized Jason. Someone said they saw enough. Someone spoke with enough certainty to influence a jury. And that's often enough. People trust eyewitnesses because seeing feels believable until memory enters the picture. Years later, a discovery changes the entire conversation. A recording surfaces, and inside that recording, questions appear. The witness whose testimony helped convict Jason reportedly expresses uncertainty about what he actually remembered seeing. Not certainty, not confidence, uncertainty, according to reporting discussed in connection with the case. The witness later admitted he had been drinking and was no longer confident in his identification. That doesn't automatically prove innocence, but it creates something powerful, doubt, and doubt changes everything. The episode never says eyewitnesses are bad people. It never argues witnesses intentionally lie. Instead, it asks a more uncomfortable question. Can honest people still be wrong? Research and legal analysis have long examined how stress, alcohol, memory limits, poor viewing conditions, and time can affect witness confidence and accuracy. That's what makes the episode title so effective. Unreliable Witness. Not dishonest, not corrupt, just human. And suddenly you begin realizing something uncomfortable. A witness doesn't need to lie for a conviction to become dangerous. They only need to believe something they later can't fully stand behind. That idea hangs over every scene, every conversation, every interview. Because once doubt enters, certainty starts collapsing. But then reality hits. Questioning evidence isn't enough. How do you overturn a conviction? That becomes the episode's next mountain. Because once somebody is found guilty, the burden changes. You no longer ask, did they prove it? Now you ask, Can you prove they got it wrong? And those are very different things. The documentary quietly shows how exhausting that becomes. Families age, years disappear, lives keep moving, but emotionally, they remain frozen, still fighting one moment, still carrying one question. What makes this episode work isn't dramatic courtroom twists. There's no secret witness bursting through the door, no sudden confession, no movie ending. Instead, there's uncertainty, and uncertainty feels heavier, because certainty allows people to move on. Doubt doesn't. The episode also asks viewers something difficult. What does beyond reasonable doubt actually mean? It doesn't mean beyond every possible doubt. It doesn't mean absolute certainty. But it does mean evidence should leave people firmly convinced, not simply persuaded by the strongest story available. That distinction becomes incredibly important, because if a key piece of evidence begins weakening, the entire structure built on top of it can start shaking. As the episode reaches its final moments, there's no dramatic answer, no announcement, no victory, no release, just a family still waiting, still hoping, still asking for someone to look again. Recent reporting says a review process connected to Jason's conviction is reaching a decision stage, potentially determining whether the case receives another chance. And suddenly the question no longer feels simple, because maybe this story isn't about guilt. Maybe it's about certainty. Maybe it's about whether one moment, one memory, one identification should decide an entire life. The episode ends without giving you comfort. Only one final thought. If even the people involved begin questioning what happened, how sure is sure enough? And if doubt survives for years, was the story ever truly over?